So I could have sworn that I made a video about this at some point, but I can't find it, and it bears repeating anyway. Gun control is lazy. Gun control is 100% lazy governments, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Every time there's a mass shooting or any kind of shooting event whatsoever, the call from many people, sometimes on both sides, is we need stricter gun control. The fuck we don't. What that reaction tells me is that the people who are calling for gun control are either unimaginative, apathetic, or both. And either way, those are not the kind of people we need in power. Gun control is a knee jerk reaction to an overarching problem. The people who commit these atrocities are not just waking up one morning and suddenly choosing violence despite what the memes will tell you. Anybody who commits violence on any scale, regardless of whether or not it's with a gun, has been through a series of events that has led them to that point. And 9 times out of 10, those series of events can be chalked up to one thing: lack of resources or competition for resources. Now, let me break that down. If you think about it on terms of a global scale, what are most wars started over? Resources. Whether that resource be something physical like oil or something like that, or a non-tangible resource like power or political influence. Those are still resources. Hell, look what the United States has been doing since the mid-20th century. The amount of governments that the United States has toppled because they didn't want them spreading power or them having any kind of political influence, or they wanted us to have the political influence in the region, is staggering. That's a resource. On a more local scale, if you look at gang violence, that's a fight over resources too. And it's kind of along the same lines. They want the power and the influence in their area. They want to control what goes on in the area that this gang operates. Power and control are resources. On an even more localized scale, if you look at just violent crime in general, or things like theft, those are all conflicts of resources. Often when somebody is killed and it's a premeditated event, it's because that person may just be getting more attention than the other person, and it's out of jealousy. Attention is a resource. School shooters have happened because the shooter was being bullied too much and they weren't getting enough positive attention. As much as people want to skirt around that fact, positive attention is a resource. Again, when I mention theft, poverty drives people to crime because they don't have access to enough physical resources to help sustain them. Literally almost every single kind of violence can be broken down into just a lack of resources and conflict over those resources. The reason I say gun control is lazy is because the legislation process that is being put into gun control could be used instead to lift people out of poverty, lift people into better situations where they're not having to compete for resources, and then they wouldn't have to. We have somehow turned humanity into such a competition that people feel like they need to fight over resources, that there's always going to be some kind of fight over these resources, and that's just the way things are going to be for the rest of eternity. So again, what that tells me about the legislative process, about the people that are currently in power, is they are too lazy, too unimaginative, or too apathetic to come up with solutions that are going to help bring people out of poverty, out of these situations where they don't have access to what they need, and lift them into a better situation. If you drive down poverty, if you drive down hunger, if you drive down homelessness, if you drive down all of these things that people are having to currently compete over, you will drive down violence as a whole. When you stop making humanity a competition, people stop competing over it. Whether that is on a localized scale, whether it is on a regional scale, or whether it is on a global scale, if you stop turning humanity into a competition, you stop people competing over it and you stop people being violent. I'm not saying it's going to reduce those numbers to zero, but it's going to dramatically reduce it. Everyday life should not be a competition. That is the dumbest thing on the face of the planet. Hell, we already see it on a national scale, especially with conservatives right now. The whole idea of America first? No! This isn't the fucking Olympics. The United States, nor any other country, no country should be competing to be the best country in the world. That is a ridiculous notion. Best in what? Stop turning humanity into a competition. The world is not our enemy. And the faster we figure that out, the faster we drive down violence, and the faster we can move on as a society as a whole into something better. Enough is enough. Everybody who's in power right now, on both sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican, whatever, figure out how to raise your people up or get out of office. My taxpayer dollars are currently funding your salary, so you better find a way to raise people up out of the situation that they're in and move society on to a better way or get out of office. Don't waste our time.